starting a new series, as you've heard today, called Date Night, living or life-giving conversations from the Song of Songs. And I just want to take a few minutes here in the beginning and kind of set up where we're going in this whole series, and then focus on one date night together. It's inspired from this book, 8 Dates, and from the Song of Songs, of course. So date nights, when you first start dating that special person, in the beginning, it's very easy, right? In fact, I remember my first date that I went on with my wife, I didn't even tell her. This is how easy the date night was. It wasn't even planned. It wasn't even on the calendar. I just showed up at the dorm, knocked on the door. She had no idea it was coming. I said, hey, can you go get Julie? I want to take her out to lunch. Even though it was lunch, I think she just woke up 5 minutes ago. So then I waited for 25 minutes, and then she came out, and then off we went to Subway. And sadly, that's a true story. I don't know why I picked. I just looked at her and was like, cold cut combo all over her. I don't know. Thankfully, love covers a multitude of sins. I think surprising her and showing up, I got away with it that time. And then you keep dating. And date nights, in that stage, pretty easy. You don't really need to plan them. They just kind of happen, And you get married, and they still, can often just kind of happen. And then life starts getting busier. Maybe kids come into the picture, and time just goes by. And all of a sudden, date nights can be a much more difficult and challenging thing to have happen. In fact, the only way that they happen then sometimes is when you are very deliberate and put them on the calendar. My wife and I, if we have a date night, I promise you, sure, there's a rare occasion of spontaneity, but I promise you, it's on the calendar, we've been planning it, we're trying to guard it and schedule all the things around it to make it happen. That's just kind of where we go. So this whole series is about challenging you to have date nights. Maybe it's a date morning, maybe it's a date afternoon, maybe it's a date night, and during that time where you have conversations with that person in your life. And it's a challenge of having 7 date conversations that are life-giving. And here's what they're going to be. This is what we're going to talk about over the next several weeks in this series. Conversations around things like trust and commitment, dreams that you have, conflict and intimacy, adventures, money, family, and today, going to be looking at the idea of growth and change. So the reason why we're doing this and why it's important is because meaningful conversations like this lead to intimacy. They lead to connection and intimacy and healthiness. And every good conversation, I'm sure you know, this is just a reminder. A lot of what I'm going to say today is setting up just reminder type of stuff. Any good conversation involves at least 2 things, right? Listening and talking. Because when we listen well, it's a way that we let the person know that we understand them, that we empathize with them and we validate them, right? When we listen to them. And when we talk and share, the other piece of conversation, that's important because it's a way that we share, here is what I want or need or dream of for us. And so both listening and talking are important in this whole idea of conversation. And the challenge over the next several weeks is to make time for date nights, for conversations around those topics that give you specific time to be together, where you can have that conversation, where you can be curious about one another, continue to learn and seek to grow and be open, and most of all in that, ask really good questions. And so what I'll give some today, and you're going to hear them every week, questions that are put out that you can then take on your date night and include in that conversation, questions that you ask each other. So quickly, I just want to remind you or give you 4 keys of deep conversation. And again, these are things that you know, but I think it's great to be reminded of. So the first key, say what you are feeling, right? And yes, this can be challenging for us guys especially. And I'm with you. There have been times where my wife has shared something with me, and then she's like, how do you feel about that? And I'm like, I agree. And she's like, oh my gosh, you're such a... No, I'm not asking you if you agree. I'm asking you, how do you feel? What do you, and it's I've got to try to dig in there and find out, here is what I'm feeling. When we say what we're feeling, it's a way that we can communicate then in this conversation, hey, I am feeling accepted, or I'm feeling rejected, or I'm feeling loved, or I'm feeling understood, or I'm feeling distant, or I'm feeling exhausted, or whatever it is. Those types of feelings are communicated in good, deep conversations. So say what you're feeling, include feelings. Secondly, ask open-ended questions. And what's an open-ended question? Basically, any question that doesn't end in yes or no, right? Questions that say what you are feeling or need or wish for or dream of. And then when we ask these open-ended questions that allow us to begin to open up with each other, explore those. Explore those, which just means it's a way of kind of digging in and excavating further into this area that has opened up. And it sounds something like this. Oh, thanks for sharing that. Tell me more what that would look like if that happened. What would that look like? What would that be like for you or for us? And that type of exploratory question allows us to dig deeper into the conversation. And then lastly, express empathy and understanding. One of the reasons why all of us struggle to share the things that maybe we feel or that we're going through is because we know that the second we do that, we're putting ourselves in a place of vulnerability, right? We're sharing something that's difficult or maybe painful or hard, a way that we have been hurt, something that we're not sure about, don't understand. And when we share something that puts us in a place of vulnerability, it really requires a lot of trust from you of how are you going to receive this? How are you going to respond to what I just shared with you? And so when we express empathy and understanding, it's a way of really validating, thank you for sharing that concern with me or that hurt with me or whatever it is. I'm with you. I'm for you. I agree with you on this. We can do this together. I understand what you're saying. Those types of statements express empathy and understanding. And so just take these with you, not just with what we're talking about today, but over the whole series, these keys of deep conversation. So today, I wanted to just begin to talk about our first date night, which is spiritual growth. And before we get into what that conversation is, let me very quickly say what it isn't. It isn't a time where you come together with your spouse or this one that you're in deep relationship with, and you say to them ways that you want to have a spiritual contest. It's not a spiritual contest. It's not, hey, thanks for meeting. Oh, I'm excited about our first date night. I'm so looking forward to this conversation. How many times did you pray this week? How many times did you read the Bible this week? We all know who's going to win that anyway, right? It's not a contest, right? Who's more involved, in church out of the two of us? It's not a contest. And it's also not time, of course, for any type of spiritual manipulation, I'm so glad we're having this conversation. I really wanted to tell you what God told me that you need to, that's just, whether it's true or not, it's just gonna make for a difficult, hard conversation, right? So it's not those things. So what is it then, of course? What is it? Well, spiritual growth date night is creating conversations about how you're growing individually and supporting each other's growth together. I'll say that again. Spiritual growth date night is about having a conversation about how you are growing individually and how you're supporting each other's growth together. Because when individuals grow, relationships grow. So when you grow and they grow, you grow together. So there is a direct impact on that. And we are going to begin, as I've already said, with looking at Song of Songs. Song of Songs was by a guy named Solomon, and it expresses the love between a wife and her husband. And there's really only three characters throughout the whole book. There's the woman and the man, and then these other young girls that kind of chime in. And the book it's a short book. It's only 8 chapters. You could read the whole thing today easily. And it's kind of divided in these 3 big parts. I mean, the beginning of Song of Solomon, you kind of have them like dating and pursuing each other. And then you have their marriage and marriage night. And then you have their honeymoon. And it's not exactly like bedtime reading with the kids. So keep that in mind. In fact, my youngest child has the Action Bible, okay? And this is great. And I was like, the Action Bible. I'm thinking about Song of Songs. I'm like, well, they'd be getting a lot of action. I'm like, I wonder if... And I opened and I went through. I'm like, I hope not. Good news to report, no Song of Solomon in here. And that's good job for you, whoever you are that published all that. Great. So, but it is a fantastic book that we want to learn from and draw from. So let's get to it. Song of Songs, chapter 1, verse 1 through 3. And we start right in Solomon's Song of Songs. And this woman starts in, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is more delightful than wine. Pleasing is the fragrance of your perfumes. Your name is like perfume poured out. This is what my wife tells me all the time. Your name is like perfume poured out. No wonder the young women love you. Now, this is, I'll tell you this because obviously you're not aware of this. This is the only time that word name is used here. And what we're getting at in the first challenge that I want to give you in this is to grow in your character. When she says name, your name like pours out of my mouth like this perfume, she's not just referring to his name. His name was his reputation. It was who he was. It is what distinguished him. It was how he was respectable among all the people. It was his character. His name is much more than his name. It's his character. And so, ladies, all you single ladies, make sure that when you date a guy, you date him long enough to know his real name. So not just, just his name, his real name. And I know sometimes it's still like you do that and it's time and then you commit or you give yourself to him, you get married, and then all of a sudden he changes. Who are you? And I know that happens at times. I'm just saying, make sure you're with and you date and you get to know him long enough to know his real name. Husbands, what is your name? What about your character needs to grow and change? Wives, women, what is it about your character that needs to grow and change? Coaches know this well. They know the importance of character well because they see these athletes with incredible talent, right? And all the fame that comes with it. But they know, man, if you don't work on the inside, your character, you will lose it all. And of course, we see this happen all the time. Your character is simply like what characterizes you, right? So the question is, what characterizes you, husbands, and you, wives, and in your relationship? What characterizes you? Is your character one that is still full of anger or hate or malice or greed or deceit or manipulation or a false use of power or lust, pride, arrogance? What needs to grow and change in your character? Are you becoming more and more a person of character that is characteristic of love and peace and patience, and kindness and gentleness and graciousness and forgiveness, humility, servanthood? What is your character? What needs to grow in your character? How does it need to be shaped? Because if you've been married for some time at all, what you know is whatever you bring into your marriage in your character won't go away because you're married. Like, oh, I know I have this thing in my character, but once I get married, that'll get fixed. That'll go away. I'll stop struggling with that. That won't be an issue. Oh, she'll wear off on me in a good way. No, whatever you bring in won't go away just because you're married. And sometimes we think that our marriages, our relationships are never going to change. We think that we're stuck and that we are who we are, But that says you're not who. You can grow your character. You can change who you are. And you are not incompatible unless you refuse to change. So keep growing, keep changing. One of the lessons that I'm sure you've learned, just as being a human for a long time, being in relationships with other people, certainly if you're in some serious relationship with another person, and absolutely if you have kids, is I cannot change you. I mean, we all know it because you've all tried. Just as I have. We've all tried. In fact, sometimes we keep trying. It doesn't work, right? But I can change me. I can change me. And then when we learn that lesson, sometimes we get to a place in our marriage where it's like, okay, yep, I got it. I believe it. I can't change you, only you can change you. I can change me. The problem here is there's only one of us, I think, that really needs to change. And surprise, surprise, here's shocker alert, it ain't me. What do you know? That's convenient. Make the biggest room in your life, make the biggest room in your relationship, the room for your own improvement. I want to continue to grow and to change into the person that God made me to be. Because here's the thing. When I change me, which I can do, when you change you, then we can change and grow together. When individuals grow, relationships grow. So that's the first thing I just wanted to share. And if we go down a few verses, I want to look at the next piece of this, Psalm 1, 5 through 6. She says, dark am I, yet lovely, daughters of Jerusalem. I'm dark like the tents of Kedar, like the tent curtains of Solomon. Do not stare at me because I am dark, because I am darkened by the sun. My mother's sons, my brothers, they were angry with me, and they made me take care of the vineyards. My own vineyard I had to neglect. The second thing that I want to say here as we think about changing and growing is support each other's growth. Support each other's growth. Our woman in Song of Solomon says, I am dark. This has nothing to do with ethnicity or race. As we just read, she goes, I am darkened by the sun. And it's like, and yes, she acknowledges that she's still lovely, but I can hear her insecurity. I can hear a bit of her lack of confidence in herself, right? That I am this way because I was forced to go do manual labor out in the fields, out in the vineyards. My brothers, they were angry with me. They made me do that. I wasn't able to stay back home and do some of the duties and responsibilities in the home where I could have better taken care of myself. I had to spend my childhood, my upbringing, going out, spending the days in manual labor in the sun, and my skin is weathered. My skin has been scorched by the sun. And I hear her bit of insecurity in sharing this. And it makes me think of the conversations that we have in this context that we're talking about when it comes to the point of you sharing something that reveals your insecurity. And obviously this is difficult for us to do at times, to reveal the part of us where we lack confidence, where we're not so sure. I know for my wife and I, some of our hardest and best conversations have been ones where we have shared things that have caused us to be insecure and lack some self-confidence in us. Whether they're ways that we have hurt and caused pain in each other's lives, or whether it's because of something that maybe happened in our upbringing, in our childhood, before we even knew each other. But still things that just have brought in us a bit of insecurity that we can't just get rid of or shake loose or be free from. Some wounds that we carry through life that just expose the cracks in your confidence, right? We all have those. But when we share them in conversation with each other, which is difficult to do because of the vulnerability that is required, what it does, though, is it gives the other person an opportunity to receive that and respond in a life-giving way. And that is exactly what this husband in our story does. Flip over to chapter 2, verse 3 and 4. And she says, like an apple tree among the trees of the forest is my beloved among the young men. I delight to sit in his shade, and his fruit is sweet to my taste. Let him lead me to the banquet hall, and let his banner over me be love. What does she say about her lover, her beloved, as she says, don't look at me because of my dark skin, because of how I've been scorched and weathered, this upbringing that I did not want or choose, this manual labor that I was forced to do in the fields all day, every day. Don't see, I'm a bit insecure over that. And his response to this, his words to her are such that she says, you know what he is to me? He is a shade. He receives this insecurity from me, and he can't just fix it. He doesn't just take my insecurity away, but he is a shade over me. He offers like protection. He offers me confidence where I am feeling where I'm lacking confidence. He is providing security for me where I am full of insecurity. What a powerful picture. In fact, it's so powerful that she says, this shade that he offers from the sun that scorched me, it has become a banner over me that is just love. It's just a banner over me of love. And it doesn't fix her struggles and hurts and pains and doubts. I don't think so. But he offers her what she needs in the midst of those insecurities. He offers her that safety and that covering. Support each other's growth. I put a few things here, and again, these are super simple. There's nothing new here. But support each other's growth. One, praise each other. When you read Song of Songs, again, 8 chapters, very short, you will get to a point where you'll be like, okay, you two, enough is enough already, come on. the amount of praise they give each other. Now, you're not going to understand most of it because it all fits in their ancient Eastern context. So, when he's like, your nose is as beautiful as the towers, of Lebanon, like, what? And don't say that to your wife. But what you won't miss is the amount of praise that they give to each other. It becomes almost overwhelming and sickening. Now, it's poetry, right? So you don't have to do that in your relationship. It's poetry, unless you want to talk poetry to each other. But don't miss the principle, though, of praising each other often, especially maybe in the midst of sharing, here's a bit of insecurity or a lack of confidence that I have, and wouldn't praises showered over, covered over like a shade in a banner of love, wouldn't that bring healing and relief to this person feeling insecure? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it would. Praise each other. Find ways to do that. Pray for each other. In these conversations, ask, what can I pray for you about? Hey, I just want to let you know, thank you for sharing that, and I will be praying for you in that or with that. And depend on God together. Most of you have probably seen this triangle. It's very simple. Has God at the top. And it's just this picture that when we individually are depending on God and drawing from Him, we can then much better support and care for and love each other. So praise each other, pray for each other, and depend on God together. So support each other's growth. And then lastly, I just want to end with this final thought of what happens as like a result of all this. It's chapter 1, verse 13. My beloved is to me a sachet of myrrh resting between my breasts. So in the ancient world, showers weren't as popular as they are today. Unless you're in my home with some of my kids, they're also not very popular, but that's a separate story. But obviously in the ancient world, it was much more difficult and hard and challenging, right, to shower. And so you'd be a bit stinky. And so at nighttime when you go to bed, you would take a sachet of myrrh filled with resin. And she would tie it around her neck and it would rest right here on her chest. She would lay down and sleep at night, and as your body heat warms up while you're sleeping, it would cause a sweet aroma to come out of that sachet, right? It would cause this perfume, this aroma that was sweet and beautiful. Now, notice what she says. My beloved is to me. He is to me. In other words, what she's saying is, he brings out of me the best of me. He brings out of me the best part of who I am. The thought of him, it sweetens her life like the aroma would. And so when we are growing in our character and supporting each other's growth, we experience spiritual growth, right? It's happening. We're experiencing it. And we, like her, can say, my beloved, man, they bring out the best in me. We all know what you look like when you're at your worst, and it ain't pretty. Or at least your spouse does. They know what you look. We've all been at our worst, and none of us want to be there. It's not a good place to be. What this couple is doing to each other in the Song of Songs is they are bringing out the very best in each other. And as a result of that, they are experiencing emotional and physical and spiritual intimacy and growth. So I just want to leave you then with this challenge as you go on your first date night, as you have your first conversation with your spouse, the one that you love, to have a conversation around how you are growing and changing, right? Not how you're going to try to change them or fix them or do any of that, but how are you growing and changing? And then a conversation where you have time to explore and to excavate the ways that you both can support each other in that process. Because when you grow as individuals, right, your relationship grows. When you grow as individuals, you grow together. So praise each other and pray for each other and depend on God and have a conversation, not where you're trying to fix each other's character or change the things, but where you are saying, here is what I am seeking God in my life and how I'm growing, and how can we just support each other in that, and you will find that together you experience real spiritual growth. Will you stand with us and we'll close out together?